What's going on, everybody? Man, it's Big Game James in here. We're big with my dog DDP, and this is our 5th episode of Positively Relentless. And guess what? The Mavericks DDP was positively relentless in getting that victory and keeping the series alive. And we're going to talk some Cowboys football like we always do. And my dog DDP is going to give me the 6th shooter of rapid fire questions that we talk about and dig deep into Cowboys football. But before anything else, let's jump in. Let's talk about these Mavericks, DDP. We snuck a victory out there. I'm going to say sneak because I kind of feel like they may kind of let us get it. Maybe just me. But we got one out of there. It's one game at a time. History is against us right now. But hey, you never know. So talk to me about this game and how we kind of, we got one out of here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game they obviously had to have. You're down 3-0. No team has ever come back from down 0-3 in a series. I think it's like 146 or 0 and 146 teams trailing 0 games to 3 in a 7-game series. So not the best odds there, but it's one of those things too. It's a shame because if they don't blow a 19-point lead in game 2, this series is tied 2-2 now. It's
Right.
complete stalemate at this. You're sitting there thinking like, okay, great. Now we're going back to Golden State where we would have already won one game. We have every reason to have confidence and to feel like we can do it again. Instead, we kind of have this feeling of like, oh man, all right, well, we held them off for at least a little. And like, that's not really adequate for what you're wanting. So yeah, they built up the big lead here. They finally came through and were knocking down shots when they needed them. Game 3, it unfortunately really wasn't there. They looked like a team out of gas. I kind of felt like Game 4 was just about their pride. They build up a 29-point lead going into the fourth quarter, and yet they have to bring back the starters because they blow all but 8 of those points. They have to bring back Luka and the guys. So instead of Luka playing like barely 30 minutes, he has to go more like 35 minutes just to kind of hold the thing together. It really speaks in a negative way towards the team's depth. So I do think they are going to run out of gas. But yeah, I'm glad they showed fight and heart. A sweep would have sucked, but I don't know how much fuel they have left in the tank to really bat the Warriors at this point.
I mean, yeah, let's be honest, DDP. Just what you said. To me, from my perspective, it just felt like, pride. You don't have anything to lose now. You're down 0-3. You're at home still. This is a dig deep, and I feel like Luka wasn't going to just allow the team to get swept. I feel like he has that competitive nature, and also I just feel like with everything that's kind of been going on, I feel like Golden State is kind of left off the gas. I feel like they got comfortable. We're up 3-0. We feel like we can go back to Golden State, and I feel like they're kind of confident right now, feeling like they can win the series. So I just feel like it was one of those games where you see in a series like, okay, you got that one. We'll see if you can get this next one, because that's when the real series to me is really going on. Not really necessarily this game. You got the game to stave off the elimination, but now it's really the one game at a time, and you're really going to have to do something like you said has not really been done before, and you're going to Golden State where the odds against where you haven't played the greatest besides when you had the 19-point lead. So
Yeah.
we'll see kind of what happens, but kind of what your thoughts about heading back to Golden State, and what kind of matchups are you looking at, and what do you think we can really do to steal a game out of there?
I think it's huge to try and keep Jordan Poole in check. He's really been, I mean, Wiggins has had a great series too, but Poole has really been, I think, the extra thing Dallas just hasn't had much of an answer for. I mean, the thing is, like, you got to get something out of your role player. Most notably, you got to get something out of Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith. They both came up with huge games last night, and Luka even said after the game, like, yeah, when they're hitting, we're as good as anybody. So I got several things to throw at you here with this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Luka in elimination games in his career, uh, dating back 2 seasons ago. The first time around with the Clippers, 38, 9-9 against Kawhi and Paul George, 46, 7-14 against Kawhi and Paul George, 33, 11-8 against Phoenix this year, 35, 10-4 against Phoenix this and then 34, 14-9 last night. So that's Kawhi and Paul George for the first two. That's the 1 seed then for the 2 Phoenix matchups, and that's the Warriors' #1 defense. That's Luka in elimination games. We're talking about a dude that's averaging in elimination games like 36.8 points, something like that. Like, it's obscene. It's the all-time highest mark in NBA history for average in an elimination game. So Luka's going to get his. He's going to put the team on his back, but it's not just about him, because the other trend that has gone on for a while is Luka has 4 straight games in which he's had 40, not 4 straight games, but 4 straight games in which he's gone for 40 points that his team has lost in the postseason, which ties a mark dating back to Rick Barry in like the 1967 season, something like that. I mean, it's just something that doesn't happen. It's just not having enough balance of that workload. So Luka can shoulder the weight. He can go drop 42, 46, whatever. But if he doesn't have that team around him, he's going to have to do too much, and they're not going to have the firepower they need. In that as well, in the game last night, it was Luka's 17th career 30-point playoff performance. And that makes him break so for a player 23 years or younger, that ties him with Durant and Kobe for the most all time for a player 23 or younger. The only guy ahead of him at that point would be LeBron. He had, I think, 21 games like that. So that's pretty impressive. For a single postseason run here, Luka now has he broke a tie with Dirk for most 40-point games in his career with 8. That was 2 games ago. That's something he's done in 27 playoff appearances compared to 145 games for Dirk. And
Crazy.
yeah, and he has the most 30-point double-doubles in a single playoff series for the Mavericks. Dirk, he had been tied with Dirk, and Dirk's 6 was from the 2003 Western Conference Finals run. Luka is the only guard on that such list since Michael Jordan 1980. So, yeah, he's going to do his thing. He's going to put up numbers, and he's going to find ways to work. You know, another thing that came out yesterday was he makes the All NBA first team for the 3rd consecutive year, 3rd time in 4 years in NBA career. Dirk had 3 of those, I think, ever. He's done it 3 and 4. Like it's
and Dirk had better players.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to say that Dirk always had all the help he needed, but Dirk had a really good team. Yeah, and I think Luka has helped elevate a lot of these guys. Now, I think it's a nice squad, but it's a squad that, as we'll get into later, I think is still missing a true number 2, and I think that's what's kind of holding them back at this point. It's Luka, a megastar almost, with a lot of guys that are kind of like good number 3 options, and then just bit parts around that. It doesn't really have that true tried and true number 2 guy. So
I didn't mean to cut you off. Would you say it has that vibe of the Philadelphia 76ers, that 2001 team where Iverson put everybody, it was just Iverson and everybody else? Does it get that kind of feel? Because in my heart, it kind of gets that feel, in my opinion, that, you know, Luka was just so good.
Yeah.
Was just so good that it was just, when Iverson was having that crazy run in that year of 2001, I mean, he had Matt Geiger, Mutombo, Aaron McKee, but Eric Snow, but they were playing their roles perfectly because they were vibing off of him. And it's just giving me that Luka's just really just put his everybody, the team on his back. But, you know, just bouncing off there has to be that second option somehow, somewhere, just to kind of balance the whole team out as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, Iverson was one of the purest scorers in NBA history. Luka, I mean, he's a great scorer, but he really is a creator first. I mean, I don't know how many would-be assists he has, like, average per game, but it feels like he could easily have like 20 assists a game if some of these guys are knocking down shots, because the last 2 seasons he's been number 1 creator of quality shots for his team. Like, there's a metric for, I think, JJ Redick said the other day when he was on one of those shows. He's been doing the circuit and pretty much telling these guys off on their own shows.
Right.
But he mentioned something like that when I think it was Kellerman, tried to say basically Luka's not Larry Bird or Magic, so they need to stop with those comparisons. And Redick's like, how many Hall of Famers those guys play with? Luka's playing with 2nd-round picks and undrafted guys. Like, no disrespect to them, but you know, as far as the shot quality he helps create, he's number 1 in the last 2 seasons. And so, yeah, I think Luka, he sets guys up, but I do think there is ceiling that this team has actually pushed past. I would have said this team has exceeded at this ceiling. So you don't know how much further they can exceed that, but that does feel like where this team is at right now. So I don't know if they get any more games. Like I don't know if they're able to bring it back to Dallas. Tend to lean toward no, but it's already, I would say, in every conceivable level I could have imagined a successful season.
Yeah, by far been a very successful season. So when you walk away from this, like Jason Kidd said, nobody thought we were going to be here. Nobody predicted us to be here. So we already have things to build on for next year. But we don't want to look at it in that aspect. But just keeping it real. I'm with agreements with you. I'm hoping that the boys can go in there and still win in Golden State.
Mhm.
But my mind, my basketball mind, and my thoughts are saying I haven't seen it. They're playing well. Andrew Wiggins, especially, has really helped them in this playoff series.
Yep.
I think he's their second leading scorer at 18 points a game.
Yeah.
And I think he's really been the X factor really in this series when I really look at it to me.
I think so. And Wiggins, I mentioned Poole earlier. Like, I think Wiggins, with how he fits on that team and everything, and the kind of run he's been on, I honestly think Dallas was willing to live with that, with roughly that production from him. Now he has given them a little bit more problems defensively than I think they anticipated, but I think they were willing to live with him scoring around that clip. It's Poole that is just what's breaking the back. Like
Yeah,
you have this guy that's, what is he, a rookie or a second year player? Like,
second year player.
yeah, and he is just murdering them. Like he's a dude that was in the D League a year ago, and it is just killing them. So last game he wasn't a huge factor, and I think that's not shocking. Then look at it, and when you look at game 2 when they built the big lead there on the road, it was the same thing. But Dallas has won in the postseason on the road. They closed out Utah in Utah. They beat them 2 out of 3 games, and the one they lost, they gave away at the final minute. You remember that? Like they should have swept basically in Utah, but they didn't. Then they closed out the Suns in that just laugher of a game 7 on the road. So they're capable of winning on the road. But if you look at like the total like miles run for these guys, it's ridiculous. Like Reggie Bullock just set a record in last night's game. He had 6 threes in the game. Huge game for him. He has now, for this single postseason run with the Mavericks, 50 made 3-points, which is the most in franchise history for a single postseason. Like,
Wow.
that's incredible. I mean, he was their big signing, and people kind of like rolled their eyes. I even kind of said, like, yeah, okay, he's nice, but like if you're telling me this is your premium pickup, that's nothing, or that's not near enough. And he struggled early on to start the year, but man, oh man, has he been. He's had a couple clunkers of games in the postseason run, including this series. But man, oh man, he's had some brilliant games. Like one of those games, that game 2, wasted in Golden State, he had 21 points in that game, and like 7 threes in that game. He had 6 threes last night. Like the dude, for how much he on in terms of defensive responsibility, chasing guys up and down court, he leads all active players at this point in the postseason. Total miles traveled, because he's checking dudes full court and taking on like the number 1 assigned guy. It's just like incredible what he's able to do. The fact that he has any leg lift at all to knock down a couple threes a game, let alone 6 or 7 or whatever he's doing, is just phenomenal. He excels in the consummate 3-and-D role that he was signed to provide to.
Totally agree with that. And just when you talked about Jordan Poole, you remember when we first started this series with Golden State, I said he was the main key factor to me, because you knew what Steph Curry was going to do. You knew what Klay Thompson was going to do. I really didn't know what Andrew Wiggins was going to do, because, he's sometimes, 1 minute he'll drop a 27-point game. Next minute he'll drop a 4-point game.
Yep.
So, I was never really thinking about him. But the guy that really concerned me from the very beginning was Jordan Poole, because number one, he's got good height, he's long, but he puts heavy pressure on you defensively. He is always attacking that basket. He's always coming at you. And I felt like that was going to be a problem for the Mavericks. different than the Utah Jazz because just the way he is constantly putting pressure, like he'll dribble all around court, he'll put pressure, and I think it was opening the doors for Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, those things. But like you said, he's absolutely been murdered, and I felt like he was going to be a key factor with that pressure he puts by going to the hole.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like I said, he's what's breaking their back, I think, in a lot of these games. But the Warriors are a difficult matchup in general. They don't stand still. They are a very flowing offense. They have a lot of guys that can handle the ball and move around. There's a reason they're the small ball architects, and that's why we said, like, the Mavericks can go small ball with just about anybody, but you're going up against like the small ball kings
Who
in
do
this case. Yeah, and not only that, with a phenomenal coach, and even if Steph's not at his absolute peak anymore, you're still talking about a guy that is one of the best, if not the best, still point guard in the league, especially on a big stage. So it's by no means an easy task to have to deal with. And then you talk about like the mileage, the fact that the Warriors are so much deeper. When they made that run to cut a 29-point fourth quarter lead down to 8, they weren't even playing their main guys. They were playing like rookies. That's how, like, that speaks to how badly the Mavericks have constructed their roster and their depth in the last several years. And that's probably, you want to look at one thing, you can point to Donnie Nelson and be like, you fucked up. Like that would probably be it. Like they just don't have the depth they need to really contend. They've got some great pieces. They do. I like a lot of guys they have on this roster, but I also look at it and say, like, their depth is going to be what kills them, because with how long this team has had to be running at just basically overdrive mode, playing Reggie and Dorian like 40 minutes a night, it was always going to catch up to them. And now it's at a point where it is. And the Warriors, conversely, because of their depth and because of guys coming back from injuries, have about a third fewer minutes per guy than the key players for the Mavericks, like their counterparts, basically. And it's just like, yeah, so you have one team that's fresh and thriving and another that's like running on fumes. It's not an even field anymore.
No, not at all. They don't even have Gary Payton III out there either. Because imagine if they would have had him, that'd have been a real problem if he would have been out there playing. So, like I said, we'll see how this. So, what do you think, DDP, about, you said a second player? You said, what will be something that the Mavericks will be looking at, in the off season.
Yep.
What's up with that?
Yeah. So the idea for this segment was that we were going to roll a little bit of like guess who, essentially, but we were going to be talking about Mavericks free agent or trade target. Now, for this to have worked, I really would have needed graphics for the guys up on the screen, because you can't see the screen. They can see the screen. So they would know essentially what we're doing, and it would essentially be kind of working around that.
I don't know. I can see the screen. I can see the screen because I'm looking at
the
I got the stream pulled up, so I can see it. It might be a little delayed, but I can do it.
Yeah. Well, I don't have the graphics prepared. So.
Okay.
So yeah, I was trying to talk around that to not really get into that, but you kind of put me on the spot.
I exposed you.
Yeah,
my bad.
Yeah,
exposure.
All good. But yeah, so let's just talk about some of the targets here. So I'm going to talk about some of the key free agent centers / power forwards coming up, because you and I seem to be in pretty good agreement that what they need is help in the middle. Like, through 3 games in this series, Steph Curry was single-handedly out rebounding the combo of Dwight and Max. Now, Maxey did have 8 boards last night. Credit for that. But
we know what it is.
Yeah. So first name that pops up here, it's a name Maverick fans are going to be familiar with. Montrezl Harrell, unrestricted free agent, 28 years old. That's one name out there. Now, got his flaws as well, his limitations. Depending on what you're looking at, that's at least help in the front court. Another name, this one's a restricted free agent, but given kind of everything going on, I feel like it's one that can be had and would be an interesting project. Marvin Bagley III, restricted free agent, 23 years old. Were taken by Sacramento ahead of Luka.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, with him, though, here's my thing. I wonder if they could pry him, because I watched him when he got traded over to Detroit.
Yep.
And he had great chemistry with Cade Cunningham. great chemistry. He played very, very well the second half of the season. Once he got traded, he
Mhm.
played very well with Detroit. I would like to see what he can do, but I don't know. I feel like he might have found a home
He might have.
in he might have found a home in Detroit. I love his athletic ability, his size. He can get up. He started showing some other parts of his game when he was in Detroit.
Mhm.
But when I was just watching him and Cade Cunningham play together, I'm like, man, I don't
It
know if he's
yeah.
leaving them guys.
It might be a good fit there, and he might have a home, but I
Hmm.
also know that it's a guy that played for Sacramento, has
Yeah,
the longest playoff drought in the
yeah.
NBA currently, more than a decade. And
Hmm.
he went to Detroit, which is a wasteland of a different kind. So if he's good with Cunningham, I'm guessing he's going to be really good with Luka. I'm guessing.
Right, right.
Just a thought, and it's a chance to go to a contender. Again, he's restricted, so Detroit ultimately will decide what happens there. And I don't
Hmm.
think if you're Dallas, you're not gonna throw like an obscene contract. That's just a
Not at
fun
all.
name. That's just a fun name out there.
Right, right.
Speaking of Warriors, you got Kayvon Looney, unrestricted, age
Yeah,
26.
good
That's
size.
it's not a guy that he beasted on us in game 3, like 21-10, but that is another intriguing name out there that, if nothing else, gives you a defensive prowess you need.
Hmm.
Um, so there's that one. I see Steven Swaim talking in the chat about Mitchell Robinson or Jonathan Isaac. Those are interesting as well. I do like
Uh,
I like the names, like they intrigue me, but they're, to his point, cheaper options.
hmm.
And you're not going to have a lot of cap space to work with regardless, because especially if you're going to be keeping Brunson,
Right.
you're effectively, like, if you're keeping Brunson, you already have to move
Yeah,
a
you
lot
spend
of
a
things
whole
around.
yeah, yeah, you gonna spend some
You're
cash
not
because he
keeping
don't play.
Dinwiddie as well. You're going to have to
Yeah.
move Dinwiddie if you're keeping Brunson.
Oh, definitely because he done made himself some big money.
Yep. So, and to Steven's point, then you might have to look at more a bargain bin type thing if you're looking at upgrading your front court. Other names out there just of note, you got Markieff Morris. Morris twins are a bit psycho, but he's unrestricted in
Uh,
32. And if you're going to take a Morris, I'm not usually looking Marcus, the better one, but Marcus is also
yeah.
the one who pretty much has a lot more death blood vendetta with Dallas from those two
Hmm.
postseasons.
Hmm.
And then you got a player option for Bobby Portis, Milwaukee.
I would look into that Bobby Portis thing.
He's 27.
Bobby Portis, he's a tough guy. He's got toughness to him. He can get you some rebounds. He can score a little bit. I wouldn't mind for Bobby Portis, not trying to throw a lot of cash at him, but if you could slide him and maybe someone else, which I doubt, but I would look at a Bobby Portis. I'm not gonna lie, I would look at a Bobby Portis.
Now let's talk about a couple of these trade targets here. Again, we're going to stick in the center power forward range.
Mm-hmm.
A couple names that intrigue me right off the top. One of them we've talked about multiple times. Another one we have not. Christian Wood, 26, expiring
Mm.
contract, making 13 million. White Powell makes 11 million. Just make of that what you. But you got a
Ooh,
combo.
Christian Wood is very athletic.
Mm-hmm. You got a combo big who can roll or do a little pick and pop. He's not effective
Mm-hmm.
in the ISO, but you want to pair him with Luka. Ooh,
Yeah.
that's
Ooh,
that's
that's alley oop heaven.
Yep, that would be a phenomenal combo there. He's in Houston, so I don't know what the price would be, but the Rockets are kind of rebuilding obviously right now, so maybe it's
Right.
still doable.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, Myles Turner, we've talked about before, 26 as
Yeah.
well. Turner is a consistent the last 5 years, 12 to 13 points a game, 6 or 7 boards a night. He averaged 7 rebounds a game this year. He's an elite rim protector who led the league in blocks in 2019 and in the 2020 2021 season as well. Um, he was paired with Sabonis for several years there, and the
Right.
general feeling was that he might have a higher ceiling because without playing next to Sabonis, because Sabonis had such a low post dominant
Mm-hmm.
repertoire that it kind of crowded things a little bit for them. Anytime Sabonis was out, Wood's numbers, or sorry, Turner's numbers would go up like pretty comfortably. The
Mm-hmm.
bubble, for instance, when Sabonis was out, I think he had 15.8 points per game, 10.8 rebounds on 59% shoot. That was in the bubble. So that's pretty nice. He's also an expiring contract, although he is coming off an injury. He had a stress reaction, I think, foot or ankle, and he played the first 43 games and then missed some time. But that's another one that is intriguing. And I don't know if it helps or hurts, but you have the Carlisle connection. So maybe there's slightly more willingness to deal, or maybe if there's not really spoken, maybe if there's more bad blood there that wasn't really expressed on Carlisle's exit, maybe it makes him less likely to deal with it. I don't know. But Myles Turner would be fantastic to add to this team. And I think you can honestly do it without having to like give up too much. I don't think you're gonna have to give up like Dorian, for instance, to make that work. I think there's flexibility. I don't know. If you're making a deal for Turner, you might have to throw in a one, which means it would be like a 2024 number one. I think that's the next
Mm-hmm.
number one pick you have available.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, see what happens with that. But that's another one. Rashawn Holmes, 29. He's with the Kings. He signed a 4-year, $46.5 million deal this past offseason, but still quickly found himself on the outs with the front office and the coaching staff. So his averages dropped from 14.2 points to 10.4 this year, and from 8.3 boards to 7 boards. He's set to make just 11.2 next season. Again, Dwight Powell, 11. So considering he's kind of already kind of gotten outs with their front office and their franchise, maybe that's doable. And you might be able to get a guy that is still a nice piece. Now, he doesn't have an outside game, but an athletic big who can give you double double or close numbers and give you a presence inside that you just don't have right now. So intriguing. That's a name that's been mentioned a lot for Maverick circles as a target the last couple of years, be it a trade or free agency. And I still think he's gettable. And
Yeah.
29, he's not young, but also again a 4-year deal. Talking 32, 33 by the time he's coming off the deal. That's not terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. You know, we've been talking about. I've been listening out the guys you've been talking about. You know, me and you've been definitely been talking about the Myles Turner. I just feel like he's just a really good fit as far as what you can do athletically, shot blocking. Not a super great rebounder, but once again, let's see with him getting more extended minutes. I think the biggest thing with him is his health. He has
Yep.
to stay healthy because he's had health issues. That's the biggest problem, the biggest red flag, if you would say, about a contract with him. But I feel like if you could get him in the building and he was healthy, well, you need that rim protection. You need those. He can get rebounds. He can score for you, and he can run that floor. And we need somebody that can get in there and really get a little nasty and dirty and have some athletic ability with it. Because Dallas is lacking that
Yep.
wholeheartedly, and it cost them.
True, but it's one of those things at the same time, like you need someone to rebound, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a big in this series. Like the first
Right.
two series, yes, you needed that. But Turner or Holmes or whatever, that wouldn't help you in this series. Like if you could magically drop them on your team now, I don't think it makes you better than Golden State. I think for Golden State's style of play, I think it would be kind of like we did in the first couple series, how we were able to play the better bigs off the floor. I mean, Gobert's a multi-time defensive player of the year, and Dallas played him off the floor most of that series.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
But do you
I
don't?
think
But
Golden
you
State
don't
would do the
think
same thing to this big.
it could be, but you don't think a Myles Turner is athletic enough where he can, you can play him in more spots, just like they were doing Looney, where you can go with the different
Well,
matchups.
Turner
I
can
feel like
stretch the floor a little better too.
right. So I feel like, I think that's where he adds because he can stretch that floor. He can run the floor. And then just like I said, with the matchups, when they threw a Looney in there, I think, you can counteract that with the Turner in there and
Mm-hmm.
he's athletic. And, the Mavericks don't run the fast break anyway.
No,
They slow it down. So I feel like even with that, if you had a team that Golden State likes to push the ball, they could come back down court, slow the game down, and really use Turner's ability, especially if you can force them, because Golden State 2-point range from 2 point, they're shooting over 50%. I think they're
yeah,
shooting 50.
Wiggins is
Yeah.
that's his
Uh, the,
strength.
you know what I mean? They're shooting like 52% from the field right now, and that's a big key. And they're going to the hole. So if you had that rim protection, it could definitely, I feel like, it help you even in this series.
That was a big thing in game 4 as well. Dallas was attacking the rim. I loved that a couple different times they actually did a give and go action with Luka where he would do
Mm-hmm.
that step back, pull up for three. the guy would obviously fly out to contest. I think he got that with who was the big that closed out on him. Might have actually been Looney tried to jump and contest, and Luka whipped a pass to might have been remember who the guard he kicked it to, the wing he kicked it to was, but it was a give and go. Luka slashed to the basket, got it in, got a layup. Like we need more of that action. We need guys getting to the rim. For one game, they've actually been able to do that. I think that's just where fatigue comes into play. Another interesting piece. This is actually not front court player, but it's just an interesting one. We talk about this team, and if you got Hardaway Jr. coming back, then this might not be as big of a deal. But I feel like if Dallas is going to do something, that there's a potential that Hardaway might get moved. He's been talked about, obviously, at this deadline as whether or not he was going to get moved. Another interesting name is a veteran small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic, the Jazz. Jazz are pretty likely to blow it up. You're talking about a 3-point marksman who space the floor and convert difficult shots. He'd give you, I think, an improvement even in your 3-point shooting. The downside is, I think it would be adding yet another quote unquote third option. We're talking about finding another or two. So that's just another name out there that intrigued me a little bit. So those are the key guys there. A lot of the wish list, you can call it, is front court related. I think in Dallas's case, right now as it stands today, they have 3 guys that can handle the ball and create. I think we've seen the highs and lows of Spencer Dinwiddie, and the highs are breathtaking. The lows are breathtaking, but for the wrong reasons. Like we can't really put a lot of faith in Spencer Dinwiddie creating that way.
Not at all.
He might have some of those games where he will wake up and actually do something, and then he can be a huge factor in that. Game 7 in Phoenix, for instance. But he doesn't have the consistency. Jalen, he's had a couple clunkers in this postseason, but Jalen's actually been incredibly consistent. And Luka's going to pretty much do what Luka does for the most part. Now, the efficiency might be a little up and down with Luka at times, but Jalen's had some really strong performances. My question with Jalen is always, is he going to be able to consistently, play at that level? I think his best games you saw, obviously, were against the Jazz, which were the most defensively starved team, I think, in the postseason, at least in the West. And he was able to feast, and he had a high usage rate those first 3 games because Luka was out. And especially his 40-point game, it was obscene, the usage rate he was able to have in that game. And the Jazz just had nothing that could stop him, so he was able to thrive. But I still have doubts about whether or not he fits the bill long term, which rolls into the next segment. This is a hill I am prepared to die on here. So the Mavericks, obviously, they're going to have to make a big decision whether or not they're going to get a new deal for Jalen Brunson. He's probably going to be looking at making 20 million plus a year, like
minimum.
dude, we were saying like literally in the Utah series before it was even over, he might be making that, and now they're in the West Finals, and he's continued to largely be like the first 2 games in Phoenix, not good,
right?
But then he settled down, good again. And this series, he's been a little up and down, but he's still been consistent. He's had a 30-point game in this series. What did he have last game? I think he still had like 21.
I think he had 20 points. I think he still had like 20 something points in that game. 21.
Yeah. So he's absolutely been consistent, and he's been, from a production standpoint, I know he had 15 points last game. Yeah. He's been productive and largely consistent. Had some clunkers, but my question with Brunson is whether or not he is your number 2. Like, I just don't think this roster has a true number 2. I don't see it. Like, I want to see it. I appreciate so much how much of a step forward Brunson has taken, because I've been very critical in the past couple of years of Brunson specifically, like saying, I think he's close to his ceiling. I don't think he's going to be able to keep stepping forward. He's proven me wrong to this point, but I still look at it and say, if you want to have a tried and true number 2 option, you need to have a guy that's a borderline all. And Jalen, he's had a breakout year. but there was never any indication that he was even close to any sort of all-star caliber player. People started to know who he is in the playoffs because he shined while Luka was out, and then the Mavericks ran to the Western Conference Finals. But I don't see him being a potential all-star caliber player, and I still have questions about whether or not he can carry a team. Like we talked about Devin Booker, remember? Like about how if Phoenix isn't running smoothly, if Paul is not in his game, whether he's out or he's injured, Devin Booker can't really put a team on his back and carry him. I think Jalen was able to do that against Utah because Utah's a terrible defensive team, and he had all the usage in the world.
Right. And Luka was out, and then you just look at your main scorer was out, but it was a series. It's
Yep.
not a season.
Right.
So in a series, you can play out of your mind, but we're talking about a whole season, and he's just not that type of guy. I mean, I agree with you with that. I like Brunson. I like his game, but he's not a guy that you're looking at as a second option that's just going to destroy you if Luka's not on.
Right.
That's why I don't look at Brunson like that. I look at him as a good player. Um, I understand what you're talking about with the ceiling, because when you look at him play, you're like, well, how much better is he going to be when you watch him? Like when I watch him right now, like, is this his ceiling?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? When you watch him, like, and
Right.
it's no disrespect to Jalen Brunson.
No,
It's just
he's
what you really
a
is.
quality third option. I think on a good night he can be a number two option, but I'm talking about a tried and true
I
every
think
night you
right,
can
a
count on
dog
him
number
being
two
that.
every
And
night.
going into the playoffs, he had never had 3 straight games of 20 points, like
Mhm,
at least 20 points in 3 straight games. Against the Jazz, he did it in the first. Oh, I guess he did the entire series, all 6 games. Like
mhm,
that's to say, he got hot. He's still a guy who, when the team was struggling through basically the holiday season this year,
mhm,
he hadn't consistently found his way into the starting lineup. The team was
mhm,
racked with health and safety protocols, signing guys off the streets. Isaiah Thomas started a game for the Mavericks this year.
mhm.
Like Brandon Knight, like they were completely at the end of their line, and he couldn't find consistency in that. And it was only after kind of all that settled that he was able to establish himself and take that next step. Now, again, he's thrived. He's a very good player. He deserves the money he's going to get, however much he's going to get. And in spite of these concerns I'm raising, I want to be clear about something. I still think Dallas needs to keep him. If they can find a way to do it, I think they need to keep him. It's going to complicate things. But I also know that if I got to pick between him and Dinwiddie, it's not a question. Dinwiddie's highs
Oh,
are
no
higher,
doubt.
his lows
Yeah.
are way more common, and they're way lower at this point. So yeah, it's this team is flush with number 3 options, because I would say like Tim Hardaway Jr. comes back from his broken foot. There's yet another number 3 option, another quality number 3 option. So you
Mhm,
have Brunson, that I think is a top tier number 3, borderline number 2 on a good night. Um, Dinwiddie is a guy who a lot of times will be either the third guy or even a sixth man. And then you have Hardaway. You got basically 3 guys who fit that mold. And it's like you just need one number 2 on this team. So it's like you can't pay Brunson the absorbent money that he's going to be due, and also continue to pay what Dinwiddie's making from that deal Washington gave him and that you had to take on. That's why I said if you're keeping Brunson, you're gonna have to find some sort of financial gymnastics to move on from Dinwiddie. And maybe honestly that's a little easier just because he has had some great moments, especially his 23 games regular season with the Mavericks this
mhm.
year. But I don't know. I feel like you're going to have to do that. And if I got to pick one of those two, I'm picking Brunson. But I'm also still looking and saying to myself, this is not the number 2 guy I'm looking for. I'm keeping him because he's tight with Luka, because he's earned it, and because he's a homegrown kid we like and who can be clutch for us. He can have those jet vibes for you. And I've talked about that a little bit before. He wears 13 because his favorite player growing up was Steve Nash. But I said, just like Jason Terry kind of came into Dallas on the heels of Nash leaving, kind of the inverse 13 to 31, sort of the anti Steve Nash, I guess, in that way. This is sort of Brunson now having the ability to continue in that similar sort of role as that wingman to Luka. I see the parallels there with Dirk and Nash and then Luka and Brunson. But you're going to have to also accept that just because he's the wingman doesn't mean that he's the tried and true number 2 scorer, consistent option.
I mean, I feel you with that, and let's see what happens. Because it's going to be interesting because Dallas needs to add something in this offseason if they want to continue to go to that next level and not stand pat where they're at or feel satisfied where at because they made it to the Western Conference Finals. Period.
Yep. So yeah, they've got their work cut out for them on that, but at the same time, I am curious to see how this new front office manages things. I think that first off season they were pretty hamstrung as far as what they could really do, and from a financial standpoint they still are. But I also think that now they have some goodwill and some people looking at them more than they had before, because it would have been 11 years without a playoff series win. Now you get 9 playoff games won. You're in the Western Conference Finals, 7 games away from championship. People are going to take a little bit of note. People are going to actually put some respect on your name when they actually see that you want to sign them. And I think as well, Nico's professed relationship with all these guys from all his years working at that you might actually have something come about from that, where it doesn't, I'm not saying it has to be like a top tier guy, but I think that can help sway someone where you can add another quality piece that frankly this team just and to be clear, it's like some people are gonna look at it and say like, well, hey, you're talking about adding a number 2 and then all those free agents or trade targets you talked about earlier, none of them are really a proper number 2. Yes, you've got me there. You've got me there. I'm more looking at ways to just improve the team. I don't know what the number 2 option is. Maybe if you're swinging a trade, maybe that opens the door to do something like that. But I think for the most part, you're probably looking at retooling some form of this roster that's 75 to 80%. Yeah, 75 to 80% of what it is now. But you're going to have to retool like some of the other parts, like Bertans. You're going to probably hang on to Maxey a little longer, although I think he's overstretched in his role for what they need from him. And you're going to have to find out some stuff. Like Josh Green might be a decent player for them in time, but right now he cannot be he cannot be in your rotation. And like in 2 minutes last night, he was a -9. Like you can't do it. You got to find a way to fill out some of these other gaps in your roster. And one of the most glaring to me is your front.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we know it's been the front court and it's been for a while, and until that issue gets really, I mean, even with KP, we knew the issues that was going on. They were still having rebounding issues, things of that nature. So it's been a glaring need, and hopefully it'll get figured out soon. Because if they can get that one kind of inside kind of presence that's really consistent, I think it can really help this Mavericks continue to ascend in the West.
Yeah, just give him a rim protector who can rebound a little bit and stay healthy. You give us that, and we got it. The KP experiment mainly failed just because of health. Like, even though he wasn't ever able to evolve into the 3-point shooter they needed, other than bubble KP, which was all of like 9 games, even though he never got to do that, when he was healthy and he was able to provide a little bit of rebounding and a little bit of defense, it was fine. It worked. But health is key, which is why Turner might still be a question mark.
For sure.
Let's see. Are we ready to roll into a little bit of Cowboy 6 shooter?
Let's do it.
All right. So, going to load up some Cowboy 6 shooter here. We're going to take a look at some different topics here. This is a rapid fire. We got about 60 to 90 seconds per topic here. So let me actually pull up the stopwatch.
All
right. So gut feeling on these, whatever quick assessment analysis you got for it. Let's roll with it.
Okay.
So first and foremost, is Sam Williams a sleeper pick worthy of keeping an eye on for Defensive Rookie of the Year? Yes or no?
No.
No. All right. Let's see. Pro Football Focus stated that Colbert could be a serious steal for the Cowboys in the 2022 draft. Are you buying what he's selling?
Buying him as Tobe being a sleeper for the team, yes, I'm definitely buying all of that. I think he can definitely add to the team. I think he's especially with Michael Gallup being out for a significant amount of time. James Washington, we already seen he's already in a boot.
Yeah.
So they're going, and I feel like they're going to feed him and really give him the kind of confidence to see if he can be at number 2 right now.
Okay. If the Cowboys are looking at it, there are rumors, obviously, that Robert Quinn could potentially be available again for a trade. If that's the case, are you considering calling the Bears, or has that ship sailed?
That ship sailed to me. I like Robert Quinn. I love Robert Quinn, but I just feel like you got Sam Williams, you brought in Dante Fowler, you got Dorrance Armstrong Jr., who you re-signed. I feel like you got to roll with it and see what you got here. And this and Sam Williams is a second round pick. He's got to play. I feel like it would only stop the progress of that.
All right. Let's see. Let's try and project Micah Parsons' second season. Is the star pass rusher ready to make a run at Defensive Player of the Year?
Definitely, this year is going to even be more dominant to me. I listened to Brian Broaddus today. They said he was not exclusively, but they were saying he was playing more defensive end than he was playing linebacker, and that's what's being in the air in Cowboys land about getting him rushing the passer. I hope they continue to just move him around and get matchups, but I definitely feel like he's going to be considered a defensive player of the year. I don't know if he gets the same sacks, but he's going to be a better all-around player.
What did he end up with in sacks? 11?
13, I believe.
13? Okay. Yeah. So do you think, you said you don't know if he ends up with the same number of sacks?
Yeah, I don't know
Do you
if
think
he
double
ends up
digit
with
is at least safe
Oh
to
yeah, he's
predict?
definitely going to get. I definitely think he's getting double digits. But like I said, he may be a better all-around player, and it may not say because we've seen guys dip in sacks, but still look at them as how dominant they were. And I feel like he's just going to be a dominant, even more dominant player this year because he came in DDP in 2021 and missed all 2020, and look what he did.
Yeah, very true.
In college.
People are still trying to sell us on buying stock in Ezekiel Elliott at this point. Are we all mad?
No, you can't be mad at that. I mean,
No, mad as in crazy.
No, we're not crazy.
Okay.
We're not going to sit there and say Ezekiel Elliott is that same player. But if you look at the backs across the NFL at his age, Ezekiel Elliott is still a very quality back. He's not the same guy, but that's why you have a Tony Pollard. Use that two-back system. Start off with Ezekiel Elliott. But for me to sit there and say Ezekiel Elliott is washed up, that's not a fact to me. I don't agree with that at all.
I don't know if I'd go as far as washed up, but I definitely feel like at this point, for what he's getting paid, the production feels like a progress stopper for Pollard. It feels like something where we should be utilizing Pollard more. And especially last year, if Zeke was playing with a torn PCL, it made no sense why he was still getting the lion's share of carries and we were utilizing Pollard more. But that comes down to the coaching staff and Ellen Moore and everything. So that's probably a different discussion. But there is some part of it where it's Zeke just insisting he's got to be the guy.
Yeah, he's probably insisting he got to be the guy, but in my opinion, Tony Pollard's not a 20-carry guy. As much as I like Tony Pollard, I don't feel like he's a 20-carry guy. I don't feel like he'll start in the league anywhere else and be a starter and getting 20 carries. I don't believe that. I feel like he's more of an explosive type player, and I feel like they need to use his skill set. Just because he's playing running back doesn't mean you have to feed him the ball and make him be the starter and Ezekiel go to the bench. It's better when they have Ezekiel, who's a bruising type running back, beat up that defense, and then when you want to hit a home run, that's what Tony Pollard offers. Yep. Get him in space because that's where he's good at. And I feel like that's what they need to continue to do. If they throw him out in the slot, get him out in the space in the backfield, do the two backfield, 20 personnel. I mean, do those type of things, but he's got to get the ball a little bit more because it helps your offense.
Fair enough. Yeah, hit him with the counterpunch. Finally, if we got to rank the NFC East skill positions, how would we stack that up? Got to say, like, the best combination of receivers, running backs, quarterback.
Okay. Ooh. Receivers, running backs, quarterbacks. Who would be number one? I'm gonna say Dallas.
Yeah, still taking Dallas, even with receiver core shakeup.
Even with the receiving core shakeup, I know the core is quote unquote maybe better on paper over there in Philly. but our quarterback is better, and I feel like our running backs are better. So that's why I feel like if you look at all three, and CD Lamb, we'll see if he's going to take that next step. He said he is. I feel like he can definitely, get the lion's share of the work this year, and we can see if he can be dominant.
Speaking of CD Lamb now, as we move into our fourth topic here, I'm gonna let you run with this, but
Mm-hmm.
the topic is CD Lamb the guy in Dallas. The Cowboys might not be so sure. Talk to me
Yeah.
about that. What you got?
Well, we did a show yesterday. The final word. Shout out to my guys, Boss Cowboys, Law Nation, and the OC. And this was a interview with Bobby Belt. Shout out to Bobby Belt. I know Bobby well, and I know he comes with accurate information. And he was talking about, obviously Amari Cooper is not here any longer, and he was the guy. And when they drafted C.D. Lamb, they were thinking he was going to eventually take over and be that guy. Well, they're saying that in Cowboys land, when they drafted CD Lamb, they had these expectations. And since he's played and been there these 2 years, he hasn't had a bad career at all. He's had good numbers,
Right.
but they feel like they're saying they don't know if he has enough alpha energy. They don't know if he can take over those games. They don't know. They're saying that they don't think he's the guy that they drafted a couple of years ago from the expectations that they had.
Hmm.
And this is the year that they really need to see it. So, like I said, there's pressure.
Yeah.
And to me, more pressure is because you're always going to have fan pressure. But when people in the building are saying, we don't know if you're the guy and we need to see if this is the year, because if you don't do it this year, we're going to probably move on from you and we're probably going to draft somebody else or see what Jalen Tobe can do. So the Cowboys are always thinking ahead, even when they got Amari Cooper. That's why they got a CD Lamb. Now they got a CD Lamb. You got Jalen Tober. Who knows what happens? But this is the pressure that he's going to have to do because he's going to have to step up and be that guy. I want him to step up, but I still need to see if he's going to be dominant because he was shielded with Amari Cooper and other things. And now he's going to see different type of coverages. Gallup is going to be out. You got a rookie. James Washington hasn't been the guy. So all eyes is going to be on him. So this, to me, is the third year when you really see what a player does. A third-year receiver and CD Lamb, Dak Prescott, they already got rapport. This should be a dominant year. So he should this should be the year that he proves the naysayers wrong, or we say, he's good, but
Yeah.
we don't know if
No,
he's dead as
that's
Brian 88 like that good.
that's fair. So if I had to look for, even dating back to CD's time at Oklahoma, if I had to find a potential, I don't know if you'd say flaw or fault, that I think there is some question about that killer instinct, if that's what you're talking about. I think he's definitely a guy who, he gets rolling, he'll gladly snatch your soul from you. He'll gladly, you know, haul in a bunch of catches, break off these ridiculous touchdown runs. But he's a guy who, I think if he's not rolling, like if he's not getting looks or targets or anything like that, he does kind of fall into just a little bit of, I don't know if complacency is the right word, but that edge wears down a little bit where it's kind of like he's not looking to kill you every single time that he's running a route. He's more just like going through the motion, doing what he's got to do. So that's
He may sulk a little bit.
yeah.
And when we talk about they maybe say alpha energy,
Mhm.
like with Dez Bryant or them guys, when
CD with
they didn't
Dez's
get the
mentality
ball,
would be
you feel what I'm saying?
Hall of
Because
Famer.
we don't, because Dez wanted that ball.
Yeah.
Dez would come off the sideline. I want the ball. You know what I mean?
Now CD does
I
want it in big
I
moments.
yeah, I have seen and I've heard him, but he's going to have to be. Yeah, I don't know. He's going to have to be a whole different type of
Yeah.
player this year. Really,
Yeah.
This is a critical year for him.
I agree. He's shown it in flashes. Obviously the walkout off in New England before Amari Cooper makes the game-winning catch on that Monday night game in Minnesota. He's the one calling for it. He's like joking, like, "Hey, sure, we don't want to run it this way instead," where the route would be going to him instead. Like he wants it in those moments. So that's something at least that to Cooper's case, the people point to like the play-in game basically at Philadelphia a couple of years ago, where he was kind of just fine with coming off the field with the season essentially hanging on the line as they were in the red zone. So if they're looking for that mentality, I think CD's got it, but I think he needs it all the time and not just something where he turns it on. He needs to
Right.
be just as willing in the middle of the second quarter to try and completely snatch your soul
He
as he
needs to be
is
the
in the
man
big
this year.
moment.
Like he
Yeah.
needs to be the man this year.
Yep.
Period.
Cool, cool. So, as we move into our wrap up here, I figure we can start with some Q&A, roll through some of these questions we got in the chat,
Mm,
and then we can kind of talk a little bit about essentially brighter future Mavs or Cowboys and how quickly did that flip on its head.
mm.
So let's see. Just rolling through the chat feed here. I see Ivan asking a question first. I know he had a follow up later on, but let me see. He was first asking about possibly getting rid of Tim Hardaway and Powell to free up some cash to sign Brunson. I mean, moving on, you can move on from Hardaway's contract. I think he is going to be a little harder to move, maybe coming off the foot, because the particular type of injury he had, the foot, can be a problematic one that comes up again. I think it's the same thing that Kevin Durant had several years ago when he was still with the Thunder. He
Mm-hmm.
tried coming back, played a couple games, and then he got another surgery all
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a Jones fracture. Maybe I'm mistaken on Hardaway's, but I think it's the same thing Durant had, in which case that might make it harder to move on from him. As for moving on from Powell, I have no problem with what Powell brings to the team. He's a consummate pro, never complains. He's liked by his teammates. I get that. I also know that $11 million is a lot of money for a guy who, in his playoff career, in like 20 something playoff games played, averages like 12 minutes and
Right.
has stat lines like 4-1 or 4-2. Like the regular season is very different from the postseason. He's a guy in the regular season who averages 20 something minutes a night, and then in the postseason averages like 11 or 12 minutes. And it's like the same stat line he puts up. It's maddening. So I'm
He has
fine
8
with
rebounds in
upgrading.
this playoffs.
Yeah. Wow. I'm fine with moving from that. Credit to him coming back from the Achilles. He had a great year, very underrated. Gets a lot of hate, and I think a lot of it is just the contract. I think that's why people are mad. The contract and how Carlisle would give him all the opportunity. And so, could you create some space with those two moving on to sign JB? Sure, but how easy would that be? I don't know how easy.
That ain't gonna be easy.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Who on the roster would Indiana actually take for Myles Turner? Asks Juan Borda. I think you would be packaging something around for Turner. You're going to probably have to ship a number one pick, and you're probably going to have to chip in like Josh Green. I don't know if you could throw in Bertans or something, but you might have to do that just to make cash work, right? Because you got 13 million for Turner, I think, and Green's obviously a rookie, so he's not making near that. Well, not a rookie. He's a second-year player. He's not making near that though. So, yeah, you might be able to do something like that. I've seen a couple different things pitched out there, and honestly, nothing has been too crazy on like what Dallas would have to give up. You've got some where they're throwing out like, oh, Dorian. I'm not moving on from Dorian. It's not because,
Right.
especially with how this team is constructed, you need all the 3-and-D guys you can get. You finally have two tried and true 3-and-D guys. You're not moving on from either of them. Come hell or high water. So that's where I'm looking there. Am I keeping Brunson as Luka's sidekick long term, or do I try and trade him? I think at this point you're keeping him. If he's willing to stay, and as long as, I mean, now is it possible that a sign and trade does occur? Yes, but that's only if you can't reach a deal with Brunson and somebody offers him a max, and he's like, I want the max.
Right.
You can't pay Brunson.
Right.
So if something like that happens and it's a crossroad you can't get across, then yeah, okay, fine. Then you'll sign and trade and you'll try and make something work. But I really think, given his relationship with the team and the opportunity that finally presented itself with this new coaching staff and everything, I think he's going to want to stay. And I think as long as you're giving him something in that 20, I had days ago for 25 million range, then I think you can work something out. But it's going to be hard. But I think he's too close with Luke. I think if you move on from him. And I understand it's a business. Dirk had to watch Nash walk, right? But it's not the same. Nash was 30 with back problems. Cuban legitimately thought he was already done and walked. He was very, very wrong. But Brunson's not the same. Brunson has not had health issues, and he's a guy that, even having played all 4 years in college, you're talking about a guy that's like 26, 27. He's in his absolute prime.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm keeping him long term. Harder when there's not. Ivan actually tagged me in, so I saw his question. I'll jump to his next. Tag me in a question, guys, at the Dallas Prospect if you want it to highlight for me to actually make sure I see it. Ivan asks, he says, you seem to care about basketball and American football. Have you ever discussed other sports like baseball, soccer, for instance? Do you have a baseball team in Dallas? Basically, Texas Rangers. But do I cover other sports? No, honestly, I don't. I've covered college football here and there. I've even covered a little bit of pro wrestling, just for shits and giggles. But I used to be a huge wrestling fan back when I was younger. But yeah, no, I don't follow soccer or other sports. I was pretty into Ranger baseball for about a 3-year window when they had the 2 back-to-back World Series run. And yeah, that's their game 6 in St. Louis is about as bad for me as game 6 in Miami, or no, game 6 in Dallas against Miami in 2006. Not as bad as that, but at least the Miami one got redeemed 5 years later. The Rangers are still waiting. And
Right.
I'm not a diehard enough fan to wait with them and suffer.
Mm.
I waited like 2 years and was like, oh, so we're done with this? All right. You
Right.
guys, call me when you get good again.
Exactly.
I'm still waiting. But I got into the Stars. I did a couple Stars videos actually when they made their Stanley Cup run 2 seasons ago now. So yeah.
I like hockey during the playoffs.
Yeah.
I like soccer with the World Cup,
Mhm.
and with baseball, I like it during the playoffs as well. During the regular season, it's just too long with me for baseball. Soccer is exciting, but I almost like I got to know the players to really get into it. And when I don't know the players, it frustrates me when I'm watching them. But soccer is a sport I definitely like to watch, but I don't know the players and things of that nature, so it does frustrate me. So it's hard for me to get into. So that's the kind of me with that. I like all sports, but football and basketball are dominant sports out here in America, especially USA. That's what goes on. And so that's what I was kind of geared to, and that's what I kind of just roll with.
Yeah. Potato Buff asks a good question, which is not a sentence I thought I would say today. Says, would you consider a sign and trade for Brunson for Turner? It would be a sign and trade both ways. Here's the thing. I don't think Brunson wants it because who put him on the leash and who's the head coach in Indiana?
Right.
I don't see
Great
it.
point.
I
don't see that.
I don't see Rick. Maybe Rick now looks at it and says like, well, hell, what else do I have? And look,
Brunson don't want to go back to that.
But
Brunson
I
don't
don't
want to
think
go back to
Brunson
that.
will do it. Rick is too old school. He's too controlling. Rick butted heads with every point guard he ever had, really in general, but Dallas especially. Like the year before Dallas won it all, he was butting heads with Kidd at the start of the year because he wouldn't even let Jason Kidd, who was already at that point a future Hall of Famer, take the reins. Like Carlisle wanted to be more controlling and calling every play, and Kidd was like, "No, dude, this is what I am. I am the floor general. I am the consummate floor general. Let me feel out the game and like handle the flow of things." Obviously, the Rondo thing went the way it did, and a lot of that was him clashing with Rick. Not saying it was undeserved and all of that, but Rick clashes. I honestly feel like Dennis Smith Jr.'s trajectory, it might not have ever worked for Dennis, but I feel like it went into a nosedive way earlier than it should have, in part because of Rick. I think Rick got him in his head and then was trying to basically turn him into something he wasn't. He was trying to basically make him a 3-and-D secondary player, like a role player. And when Dennis didn't immediately excel at that despite full effort, he basically just was like, nah, it's not going to work. Get rid of him. Basically said at the All-Star break, the first year he was trying that, like, nah, I'm done with this.
Right.
So I think he kind of ruined Dennis Smith, which I hate. But And then obviously Luka,
He
right?
did
Like,
ruin him.
yeah. And then obviously Luka, like even when he was forced to give up the reins a little bit to Luka, they still clashed. They still butted heads all throughout the year. You could see it on the sidelines. You could see it in the playoffs, regular season, whatever. They bickered. They argued. You don't see that like at all with Luka and Kid. Like to Kid's
Mhm.
credit, he has really got a good feel on kind of managing Luka, knowing how to push the right buttons. When he wants to be critical of him, he does it in a way that doesn't come off as standoffish and irk Luka, at least not that we see publicly or in press conferences. So kudos there. But yeah, Carlisle and point guards don't mix. Brunson's not going to want to go back to that.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah. I think that's all the actual questions. Yeah. Bunch of crosstalk, but I don't see a lot of actually questions directed at us this haven't already addressed. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But now, so we got the Mavericks and the Cowboys here. There's been an interesting kind of flip, I feel like. Let me know what you think. There's been
Mhm.
an interesting sort of flip though from if you literally rewind it back just a few months. I feel like they're in opposite positions where we feel like the Mavericks are spiraling and the Cowboys are rising. We'd say like the Cowboys window is brighter, like open wide and brighter than ever. They're heading into the playoffs and they've got all this momentum, the offense and the defense. Like we're talking about them being Super Bowl contenders, a legitimate contender at that. And the Mavericks around December 23rd, that around 16 and 18 was their record. AP again having missed a lot of time, beat up. The team ravaged by health and safety protocols. Luka out of shape, dealing with an ankle injury. Like not a good combination. And yet you flash forward 4 months and it feels like they're in completely different places now. What do you think?
Definitely in different places, and I think coaching is huge. I mean, we always talk about coaching, right? DDP. When we had Jason Garrett at the helm, I felt like coaching was one of the big reasons that we got held down. We've had talent. Dallas has had mad talent. Dallas had great talent last year. But what
Mhm.
happened? Not just the talent let us down, but the coaching let us down. And I feel like one of the biggest differences right now with the Mavericks and the flip is coaching,
Yeah.
because when you look at the team with the Mavericks, they don't have the outstanding roster out there. They don't have the dynamic. We just talked about needing a number two.
Hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? And it's a lot of role players. So when you look at it from my perspective, coaching is to me right now is the key, is why there's the role reversal and the flip. Now, maybe talent wise, you would say the trajectory is higher for the Cowboys, right? But with the things that continue to go on and the lack of coaching and the um, misfalls or underachieving,
Hmm.
I'm gonna say Dallas's Arrow Mavericks is higher, just because if they get, we talked about another player, that strong number two, you really feel good about heading into the season next year and going right back to where you left off.
Yeah, I really do think so. Like the West is brutal all the time, but I do feel like there might be something there with this team. I think as long as you have a healthy Luca, and I'm surprised to say this, but I'll say it because I think at this point it's pretty indisputable that I was wrong about it. I think as long as you have Luca and Jason Kidd, and you have Luca's health, I think you're gonna at least be in position to be like in the mix. Like you got to have general health, but it's like you got those two guys, you can at least kind of like you had for Dirk for all those years. At the very least, you know, all right, we're going to be a playoff team, and we're going to be tough. We're going to be a tough out, if you will. And if you get those years where you have the right pieces in place, you can be a team that makes a deep run. I think it's absolutely possible with with those two parts, the coach and the star. That's like the two most important things. And if you can add to that another basically star caliber player, then you've got something. The KP
Mm-hmm.
experiment failed, put a lot of eggs in that basket really prematurely. And, as much as I want to keep Brunson, your next star, I just think that's another. I think that's another borderline star, and there's nights where he can do it and he can be that part. But I just have a hard time seeing this team as like a championship team, like winning the title, and Brunson being the second best guy on that team. I feel like more than likely he's the third guy.
And that's okay. And
And hey,
I
that's
agree
not
with you.
bad.
That's okay if you got him as a third option the way he's playing right now. You feel really good about that because if you get that strong second option where it's helping Luka, and then you got Brunson in the cut as the third guy, yes, now you feel like you can compete for the championship. Now you can feel like you can compete every single year, and you'll be knocking at the door.
Yeah.
And that's why we talk about the arrow is different, in my opinion, because now you have a coach and Jason Kidd where we're looking at it like we like the vibe with him and Luka. He's doing it right. And just as you said, as long as you kind of got him right now, vibing with Luka, you're good. You can feel like you can compete with that if you just add, you know. And coaching makes a huge difference no matter what sport it is.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with Jalen being the third guy, like you said.
Nothing wrong
like
at
I
all.
said. I mean, consider this. We talking wrestling. Hulk Hogan was the third man for the NWO.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
There's nothing
strong number
wrong.
3.
There's nothing wrong with being a third guy.
Yeah. Who's the third man? It's Hogan.
Chris Bosh was looked at as the third guy over there when they all kind of hooked up.
Yep.
But Chris Bosh was a key factor, though.
Yep. Absolutely.
So
yeah. Well, I think that.
And and what else did I say before we end off of here? The big 3. They don't be saying a big 2, right? They always be saying a big 3.
Yeah. Now we're in like an era of big 3s. Although I would say not a lot of big 3s really are around at this point. Kind of devolved into a lot of like 2 superstar pairings. Like the last team that tried that was Brooklyn, and look what happened. They traded Harden and Gidden. Now they're saying they're probably not keeping Kyrie, and Durant's probably gone too. You want to talk about a franchise that bet the house and lost in record time?
Yeah, but you know what? The New Jersey Nets are always betting wrong because they bet on Paul Pierce, and they bet on Kevin Garnett, and that failed in their faces too. So they a big time gamble. I give them this: they gamble, they won it, and they gamble, but they got to be smart too.
All right, I think I have the solution here. I think they need a Spencer Dinwiddie reunion. That's what they
get them
need.
all back over there.
We'll take Kevin Durant. It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, it would definitely make that work right now.
He don't want
him and Luka. Oh my God, that would be crazy.
Yeah, he don't want to be there anyway. Apparently, without Kyrie, so why not? Of course, he hates Luke. He hates our Cubans. So.
Yeah,
that's the downside of having an owner who won't shut up sometimes. But yeah, but we'll see. You wanna bring this thing home?
Yeah, man. Well, you know what? We appreciate everybody jumping in the chat. We had a good little crowd. You know, we're gonna be back next week for part 6, episode 6 of Positively Relentless. And we gotta get this win, DDP. We gotta be positively relentless and get this W, jump at the third 3-2, because you never know how it's gonna go. And miracles can happen. We've seen it before, dog. We've seen it in baseball with them Red Sox. We've seen it in NBA with them Cavs. It can happen again. And I'm just going to jump out there and say, let's get it, man. So for my guy, DDP, Big Game James, Positively Relentless. Oh, my gosh. Dallas Prospect. We'll be talking to you soon. We out. Peace.
And